The video you are watching right now is the moment that officialized Disney's acquisition of Lucasfilm, a company known for creating a lot of famous pieces of media, but mostly for creating the Star Wars franchise under George Lucas's direction. This moment is also known by many Star Wars fans as the moment when George Lucas gave his baby away to the Walt Disney Company, a moment that we didn't know at the time would destroy this franchise forever. And so, that brings us to today, in 2025. With the rights to Star Wars in their hands, Disney made over 5 movies and 12 TV series that are considered canon in the Star Wars universe, with the addition of many comic books, non-canon TV series, and more projects. If you would ask any Star Wars fan what their opinion is on the way Disney manages this franchise since the last few years, well, most of them would say that they ruined the franchise. But why? Why, would you ask? Well, that's where I come in and yap too much about why I believe Disney ruined this magical franchise for me and for many people. On that depressive note, hi everyone, I hope y'all are doing fine. In today's video, I will be ranting on why I believe Star Wars is slowly dying, if not already dead, in Disney's hands. If you guys want to support this channel, don't forget to leave a like or dislike if you want, subscribe if you want more content like this, and let's start this video with a little story about myself and how I fell in love with this franchise in the first place. Also, spoilers alert for the rest of the video. As you guys have probably noticed, I'm a member of Gen Z, which means that I wasn't even born when the first Star Wars movie came out in theaters in 1977. So, I cannot consider myself as an OG Star Wars fan. My actual first contact with Star Wars was The Phantom Menace a decade after its release. I fell in love with this franchise the moment I experienced this movie for the first time. And I know this movie is not critically acclaimed, but as a kid, I didn't care. I was impressed by the action sequences, the lightsabers, and the spaceships. I wanted more Star Wars content, so I watched the entire prequel trilogy and the entire original trilogy, and I loved it. Years later, I matured. A little bit, but I still mature. Disney announced their first Star Wars movie that would release in 2015, The Force Awakens. I was so excited to go watch this movie when it was announced, and when it came out, I thought the movie was pretty good and pretty solid, and nowadays, I still find it pretty solid. In the meantime, I also discovered Star Wars Rebels, the first Star Wars project in Disney's hands, which is a kids show, and I honestly loved it. They then also released Rogue One, a spin-off movie critically acclaimed by the Star Wars fandom. And so, Disney was at their prime when it comes to pleasing their fans. Now, I'm pretty sure you know what's coming next, so I won't keep you here for too long. I already made a video about the sequel trilogy around 2 years ago, and if you want to know my full and honest opinion on these movies, you can go watch that video, even if it's pretty old now. And so, in 2017, Disney released the follow-up movie to The Force Awakens, The Last Jedi. The movie has mixed reviews. It's either you love it or you hate it. This movie single-handedly divided the entire Star Wars fandom like it was Marvel's Civil War. Personally, I hated it. And I still do. So, that was my first stab in the back from Disney. And it sadly wasn't the last. They released 3 projects following up this 8th movie, and for me, my liking of this franchise became a roller coaster. They released Solo, a Star Wars story, which I didn't like very much. They then also released The Mandalorian Season 1, which I loved. I won't talk about Resistance yet because I didn't watch it when it was released. And so, they announced the movie that was supposed to conclude the Skywalker saga. The saga that I grew up watching numerous times and that made me fall in love with this universe. The movie was titled The Rise of Skywalker. The teaser for this movie already ruined my hopes for it to be good, but still, that's when I decided to do a full-on marathon of all the canon Star Wars projects so I could have a proper conclusion for this franchise. I watched the entirety of the Clone Wars series. I watched every movie and every single TV series, even goddamn Resistance. That was the moment in my life where I was the most in love with Star Wars, and I wanted to know more about the lore of this universe. And so, The Rise of Skywalker released in theaters in 2019, and that destroyed my hopes for this entire franchise to be good ever again. So, what happened there? How did Disney ruin this franchise? And did it ever become good again 6 years later? Well, now, here's the part of the video where I talk shit about Disney. How can I resume the direction this company took with one of its biggest franchises? Well, I have one simple answer. Money. It's no secret that Disney is one of the greediest companies out there, up there with Nintendo and their Switch 2. We live in a modern era where everything is expensive and most of us can't even afford to buy the essentials to survive. Disney, a multi-billionaire enterprise, doesn't really help their consumers because they release more projects with less effort put in the quality of these projects, just so their consumers can keep buying a Disney Plus membership regularly. They decided to take the quantity over quality route, which I honestly find disappointing. Star Wars is a franchise with an infinite amount of possible stories to be told, but because Disney wants their audience to keep subscribing, they will focus on already established characters and time periods, so their average audience may be interested in their projects. By trying to please everyone, they just please almost no one. And so, that's how we end up with projects like The Acolyte, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the Book of Boba Fett. These projects had so much potential, but they were ruined by the small effort put into the quality of these projects. And also by the way they try to please everyone, in my opinion. The problem with the modern Star Wars projects also comes from who create these projects in the first place and who greenlights them. One person in particular that is related to all these projects is Kathleen Kennedy. Now, I am not going to attack Kathleen as a person because I don't believe we should attack the human being she is. We should attack her decisions and the projects she greenlighted. We have to stay respectful here. So, Kathleen Kennedy is the president of Lucasfilm, which means she oversees how the operations of the company work and she tries to ensure the company's success. She pretty much has full power over Lucasfilm under Disney's control. And so, she is credited as a producer and an executive producer on pretty much every single Star Wars project. So obviously people will point their finger at her if a project ends up being bad. But let's not put all our eggs in one basket here. Kathleen may have greenlighted these bad projects. Yes, but let's not forget who she hired to create these projects in the first place. Now, I can see 3 reasons why a project would fail. First off, maybe Kathleen hired one single individual with full or significant power over an entire project. But this person she hired may not have been well fitted for this job. And they take risks that end up ruining these projects, which ends up disappointing an entire fandom. Maybe it's because they don't respect the lore of this universe, or maybe because they break established rules of this universe. Either way, an individual hired by the president of the company might divide an entire fandom because of the decisions and the creative choices they took, which can bring negative feedback. Now, the second reason, in my opinion, is if Kathleen hires different individuals to work on the project with an equal amount of power over it. And these individuals could be well fitted for the job, but because they all have creative differences, well, that ends up impacting the final product and make it non-coherent, let's say. This project in question could introduce storylines or ideas that are taken by another individual working on the project and getting thrown away by this person. For example. Finally, the last reason why a project would fail in my opinion is because of the length of these projects. You see, when a project starts as being made for a movie and ends up becoming a TV series instead, well, you know damn well that they had to put fillers to make them work as a TV series. They probably make the switch because they think their revenue will be bigger with a Disney Plus membership during the upcoming weeks when the episodes are dropping. Now, with these three theoretical reasons I mentioned, let me provide some examples where I believe Lucasfilm made one of these mistakes in practical. Let's start by hiring an individual that is not fitted for the job of creating an entire project from the Star Wars universe all by themselves. Let's talk about one of Lucasfilm's more recent projects that flopped. The Acolyte. Leslie Headland was hired to create the show. She had significant power over the project, and it ended up being disrespectful towards the entire lore of this franchise. Why? Well, I'm not as deep into the Star Wars lore as many other Star Wars creators are, but from what I understood, the implementation of a Sith Lord during a time of peace breaks the High Republic timeline, and having two twin sisters created by the Force breaks the legend surrounding Anakin Skywalker's character and how he was supposed to be the only living creature born as a creation of the Force. I don't think Leslie understood what made Star Wars Star Wars. You know? The entire story is about Anakin's legendary birth to his legacy, and she did not respect these foundations, which proves that her and the people at Lucasfilm greenlighting this project do not give a single f*** about respecting the foundations of this franchise. They are just retconning everything, everywhere, just to please the creators of these shows. Now, here's an example of when two individuals have creative differences that ends up bringing down an entire project. The sequel trilogy had so much potential when it started. The story introduced to us with the 7th movie, The Force Awakens, brought intriguing stories for the two upcoming follow-up movies. Who are Rey's parents? Who is Snoke? Will Kylo Ren become like his grandfather, Darth Vader? Why did Luke hide on Acto? All these questions should have been answered by the same person who introduced these stories into the saga, which was, at the time, J.J. Abrams. Don't get me wrong, J.J. is not a perfect guy at all, but these stories were his and should have been explored more by him. When you want to start a trilogy, you need to plan it in advance, not write it movie by movie without knowing where you're going with it. And that was the sequel trilogy's biggest problem. Lucasfilm decided to hire Rian Johnson for the 8th movie, which clearly changed the path they were going with the previous installment. So, to answer my previous questions, in Ryan's mind, who are Rey's parents? Who is Snoke? Well, I don't care. Let's kill him for fun. Will Kylo Ren become like Darth Vader? I don't know, but here he is without his mask. Doesn't he look cool? Why did Luke hide on Acto? Because he's a pussy and he wants to drink milk? You see, all the decisions that Rian took destroyed J.J. Abrams' plans and also ruined the chances of this trilogy to ever be coherent. And when they announced The Rise of Skywalker, they also announced that it won't be directed by Rian Johnson, but again by J.J. Abrams. So, what was the point of changing directors in the middle of a trilogy? His ideas were destroyed and he had to come up with new ideas in such a short period of time. Not to defend the decisions he took, but that might help us understand more how the situation went, you know? And his decisions brought us the worst Star Wars movie ever made, The Rise of Skywalker, a movie that is disrespectful towards the entire franchise. First off, somehow Palpatine returned, and we learned that Rey's parents are nobodies, but hold on. Plot twist, she's Palpatine's granddaughter. Do you really think that J.J. Abrams thought of this before 2015 when The Force Awakens released? He tried to bring back a fan favorite villain so he could please the audience, but All it did was break the entire lore, disrespect the story, and bring more questions surrounding his survival. You remember Kylo without his mask in the 8th movie? Well, here he is with his mask back on now. Pretty sure JJ liked him better with a mask on, you know? Kind of a back and forth between Ryan and JJ there. This trilogy could have been so much better if it was planned in advance and if they did not switch the creative directions they took in the middle of a trilogy. Finally, the last reason why I believe Disney's projects are failing is because of the length of these projects. And the example that I am bringing here today is the Obi-Wan Kenobi show. At first, I remember this project being arranged to become a movie a couple years ago, but instead of staying a movie like it was supposed to be for many years, they changed the formula last minute and made it an entire show. Why? Well, probably because they saw on the internet the amount of people that were waiting for this project to drop, and maybe they thought it would be more beneficial for them to release it weekly on Disney+. And sadly, that brought us many filler episodes and many filler moments, like that young Leia running scene. And so, with all that said, I think you can understand better why I don't like these newer Star Wars projects under Disney's greedy control. There are exceptions, obviously, like the Andor show and The Mandalorian season 1 and 2. But overall, I don't think Disney understands what makes Star Wars so loved by its fandom. In Andor's case, Tony Gilroy, who had significant, if not full, power over this project, understands pretty well how to introduce intriguing stories and characters. In The Mandalorian's case, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni introduced a new and refreshing style of direction in the Star Wars universe that works. I will not count the 3rd season in that sentence, but whatever. Disney should try new things, in my opinion, instead of taking the easy path by making stories about already existing characters. Skeleton Crew is a great example here. Even if I didn't like the show very much, it explores a totally new universe inside the Star Wars universe, and I want to give my respect to Lucasfilm for that. Now, with all that said, we can also question the future of this franchise. Will it ever be good again? Well, if we base our opinions on the recent projects, well, the answer is no. But I think I've heard a rumor that Kathleen Kennedy is stepping down from her role as the president of Lucasfilm at the end of the year. So maybe there's a small possibility of hope. Just a small one. And I'm also pretty excited to see Andor Season 2 and what Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau have planned for the future of the Mandoverse. But to answer my previous question, I still don't think it will ever be as good as before ever again. What's your take on this? Tell me in the comment section down below, what are your thoughts on the way Disney manages the Star Wars franchise? Leave a like or dislike if you want. Subscribe if you want more content like this, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya!